The footage used in this video is taken for illustrative, critical, and commentary purposes. The use for it is entirely transformative and is not a substitute for watching the original movie, thus causing it to fall under fair use and does not violate copyright. Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight. Specifically, my favourite film of the whole 2020 so far, and one that I feel thoroughly deserves consideration for a chapter in Dead by Daylight. James Wan's eclectic horror masterpiece, Malignant. Perhaps more than anything else, Dead by Daylight is possibly best known for its extensive history of licensed collaborations. From Freddy Krueger to Ash Williams, from Nemesis to Pyramid Head and Steve Harrington, we've got a list of horror idols that beggars belief. But one noticeable gap we seem to be missing is in modern horror licenses. Most, if not all, of our licensed collaborations are from media that comes from before the turn of the new millennium. The only license you ever had for a chapter that's too young to order alcohol is Stranger Things, which itself is so steeped in 80s nostalgia that you can smell the hairspray whenever you queue up with the Demogorgon. And even chapters based on newer pieces of media like the Resident Evil 3 remake are often from sequels or reboots of older franchises, meaning the chapter ends up capitalising on the same nostalgia that those sequels and reboots themselves did. The closest we've come to a true modern horror license is Saw, with the original instalment of the franchise turning 18 only 2 days ago. Its video is going out on the right day at least. But 18 years is a long old time, and horror has evolved so much since Saw, with so many landmark properties that Dead by Daylight has left untapped. In this time you've had everything from supernatural horror like The Conjuring, to horror satires like The Cabin in the Woods. And that's not even taking into account new horror games that you can only talk about for so long before a certain animatronic bear rears his head. Not today, Frederick, not today. And while a lot of attention has been on the revival of older franchises, the requel trend set by David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy, there's been a resurgence of independent and non-franchise horror movies as recently as the last 18 months. Nope, Smile, Last Night in Soho, The Black Phone, Titan, Terrifier 2. Oh baby, I want to talk to you about Terrifier 2 someday, when I figure out how to get Art's kills past the YouTube censors and maybe get an interview with Steve Barton. God damn it, I am trying on that front. I know he wants Art in DVD and I just want to have that conversation, man. Call me. In any case, I think I can find two movies that set this trend up for the 2020s being the decade of amazing horror. Released at opposite ends of the COVID-19 lockdown that saw theatres around the world close their doors to try and wait out the pandemic. February 2020 brought Leigh Whannell's beautiful reimagining of The Invisible Man, modernising the old tale as an examination of the impact and aftermath of domestic abuse as the last hurrah of the big screen before the world just froze. 2021 saw Whannell's fellow Saw mastermind James Wan bring Malignant to the silver screen on September the 10th that year to solid critical reception. The film had a disappointing box office run that saw the film unable to make its $35 million budget back, something which I attribute to a mix of it coming to HBO Max for free on the film's theatrical release day, the film's marketing as a fairly standard supernatural horror film, and Malignant releasing only a week after fucking Shang-Chi of all movies. But be that as it may, Malignant pretty much became an instant cult classic, and anyone who's been around me in the past year will be able to confirm that because I haven't been able to shut the fuck up about it. The film has been out for just over a year now, and if you clicked on this video, I assume you don't care about spoilers because this entire video is basically entirely spoilers for the film's main twist. If you don't want to get it spoiled, go and watch the movie. We'll come back to this video, you will not regret it. Go now, I'm about to start spoiling shit. Go, vamonos. Right, if you're still here, let me tell you the many glorious reasons why Malignant would absolutely fuck as Dead by Daylight's youngest licensed chapter. Malignant was effectively a film that spited its own marketing strategy. It was presented to audiences in trailers as fairly standard Blumhousey supernatural horror, but hoo boy was it anything but that. Malignant starts off as kinda slow, following the life of Madison Lake Mitchell as the mysterious death of her abusive husband precedes a series of peculiar dreams, where she's helpless to watch the deaths of strangers at the hands of some shadowy figure, only to learn when she wakes that those deaths really happened. And there's a mysterious bleeding from her scalp. As Madison starts slowly to unravel more about her childhood, one name keeps cropping up, everywhere from Madison's home movies to the patient notes of one of the murder victims. and that name is Gabriel. Madison and her adopted family try to uncover the truth, but Gabriel's identity largely remains a mystery. Young Madison called him the devil, and when he speaks it's through electrical equipment like telephones and radios, suggesting he might be some sort of ghost. But that isn't quite right. Gabriel, as it turns out, is a part of Madison, or more accurately, he was, during his and Madison's childhood growing up as conjoined twins. He was believed to have been removed when Madison was too young to remember it, but due to sharing a central nervous system with Madison, it was only a matter of time before Madison's head trauma at her husband's hands awoke him, and he wanted vengeance on everyone who tried to get rid of him. Turns out Madison was actually killing those people. Well, her body was at least, piloted by Gabriel as he brutally twists her limbs to his service and constructs third-person hallucinations of the murders to throw her sleeping mind off the scent and cast suspicion onto her. We only really get to see Gabriel himself cut loose in the third act, in probably one of my favourite killing sprees in horror history. The police station massacre is such an incredible piece of fight choreography and camera work, as Gabriel pilots a human body backwards and chews through first a jail cell full of prisoners and then a bullpen full of police officers without breaking a sweat. It's a thoroughly satisfying payoff to what had been a fairly slow build-up, that revels in the absolute joy James Wan has for making horror movies. A joy that I, and so many fans of this movie, shared in. But enough of me gushing about how absolutely gorgeous and amazing this movie is for at least the next minute or two, because it's time to talk about Dead by Daylight and the place I believe should be reserved for Gabriel in our Horror Hall of Fame. Let's start by discussing Malignant's credentials as a slasher flick worthy of a chapter, and what Gabriel and his victims have to offer in Dead by Daylight. The first thing I want to talk about is the kind of slasher film that Malignant is, by extension the kind of slasher that Gabriel himself is, because he's the kind of character we don't see very often, especially not these days. To show you what I mean, I'm going to make another one of my fabled MS Paint diagrams. I call this the sliding scale of slasher superhumanity, or the SSS. At the lower end, we've got the strictly human slashers. Characters who are maybe skilled or strong, but no more than a reasonable human could attain. This is where you'd find Norman Bates, Billy Loomis, Leatherface, just kind of guys. As we move up the SSS, we start to find characters with less plausible deniability. Those who display durability or strength beyond human limitations, but aren't explicitly supernatural. I put Michael Myers at the lower end of this, but I think the poster boy for the empowered slasher has to be Jason Voorhees. He's an undead behemoth with incredible strength and toughness, but he's not really got anything beyond that going on. And then we've got the higher end, the outright supernatural slasher. Freddy Krueger and Candyman belong here, in the tier of slashers who basically throw human logic and limitations out the window. But this category of slashers has fallen out of favour in recent years compared to their more mortal counterparts. This is because characters at either of the spectrum's extremes often stop being slashers altogether. If a guy is too much of just a guy, they often lose the predatory presence a slasher has, and if they go too supernatural, it ends up stepping on the toes of a haunted house story, possession film, or bog standard creature feature. You wouldn't call John Doe from Seven or Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men a slasher any more than you'd call Boogaloo from Sinister or Valak from The Conjuring a slasher. Where Gabriel falls on this scale is very interesting, because I put him about here, very close to Freddy and Candyman, which is interesting to me because Malignant spends about half its runtime pretending it isn't a slasher in the first place. A large chunk of the film frames Gabriel as kind of a ghost, and despite his gory kills, the story focuses more on Madison and Sydney figuring out what Gabriel is. Gabriel's own actions in the story are kind of secondary, and he's not really given the stage to himself, at least until the third act. Malignant, drawing so strongly on Wan's own history of supernatural horror from the Conjuring series, allows Gabriel to fill the niche of a supernatural slasher that's become kind of unpopular in recent years as supernatural horror starts to tend towards Conjuring-style possession or haunted house movies. This willingness to break Malignant away from reality's confines gives Gabriel a very unique power set that feels more like something out of a 90s B-movie than the grounded and realistic murderers we tend to see in 21st century slasher films. And this makes Gabriel particularly well suited to DBD's requirements. Every new killer needs a new and innovative power set, and more so than any modern slasher I can think of, Gabriel really breaks the mold. When controlling Madison's body from the back of her head, Gabriel twists her limbs to allow him to move and fight backwards. He moves Madison's body in a way that's both entirely unnatural and completely smooth, moving around constantly and using the terrain to his advantage to offset the fact he's really no more durable than Madison's ordinary human body is. However, he's still inhumanly strong for some reason that the film tries to explain away as Gabriel feeding on Madison's unborn fetuses to gather his strength, which is why she's had several miscarriages in the past, and has some level of control over electronic devices such as lights and radios, which the film doesn't even bother trying to explain. A power for Gabriel would likely revolve, at least in part, around his physical prowess and dynamic fighting style, which would set him apart from many of DBD's more physical killers like Oni and Trapper, who are mostly just hunks of muscle. But there is literally a whole other side to Gabriel, his sister Madison, played by the excellent Annabelle Wallis with whom he shares a body. The events of Malignant are told through Madison's eyes, as she helplessly watches Gabriel's murders every time she goes to sleep, and spends her waking hours piecing together the puzzle with her adoptive sister Sydney and Detective Kakoa Shaw. As Gabriel's induced hallucinations become more intrusive, Madison learns the truth about Gabriel and spends the third act battling him for control, only to imprison him, at least for now, within the same hallucinations he trapped her in for most of the movie's duration. I think it would be impossible to do Gabriel justice in Dead by Daylight without bringing Madison along for the ride, which creates its own unique set of issues. Madison more or less fits the final girl role for Malignant, the one virtuous person we know the killer is saving for last, who fights back and ultimately wins. But we can't do what we typically do in Dead by Daylight and make her the survivor. She's as much a part of Gabriel as he is of her. Instead, it'd probably be better to tie her into Gabriel's power itself, and have transforming between the two of them be a core part of their gameplay, just as it's a core part of Malignant. We haven't had a true stance-shifting killer since the pre-reworked Doctor, and there's a lot you could do switching between the regular person Madison and the twisted killer Gabriel. Daniel Tack, a former writer for Game Informer, outlined his thoughts on adapting Gabriel into Dead by Daylight with this idea in mind, suggesting that Madison functions like an imposter in Among Us, where survivors are tricked into thinking the person working on the generator next to them is their friend, until they turn to Gabriel and attack. This idea of a disguise killer is a tale as old as time. It's been bandied about since at least the Legion's release, and Tack actually pointed out the primary issue with a killer like this, that similar concepts have always struggled to overcome: the massive disparity that killer would have between survivors with voice comms and survivors without them. This would be doubly true for Gabriel because Madison is very visually distinct. Between the dark clothes and hair and the likeness of Annabelle Wallis, Madison doesn't really look like any existing survivor in Dead by Daylight, so picking her out would be pretty easy. However, just because survivors won't literally mistake you for their friend, doesn't mean a killer who turns into a survivor isn't something worth thinking about. A killer who acts like a survivor doesn't need to be in disguise to be useful. Survivors don't have a terror radius or a red stain. They're smaller than killers, quieter, and can interact with the environment in ways that killers just don't get to. Making Madison a functional part of Gabriel's power doesn't hinge on being a disguise character. It requires retooling what survivors already do in such a way that doing them would benefit the killer's game plan. Of course a killer can benefit from having no terror radius and no red stain, but how can a killer benefit from, say, doing generators, opening gates, cleansing totems, opening chests, dropping pallets, hiding in lockers even? Some of them have more obviously practical uses than others, and the way I see it, the key to integrating Madison into Gabriel's power is making how Madison interacts with these basic survivor gameplay loops benefit the end objective of the killer. Basically, Madison shouldn't be a tool to disguise as a survivor, so much as a utility tool that sacrifices the ability to actually harm survivors to instead bring stealth and support tools to supplement Gabriel's actual chase power. So we've got 3 loose design tenets I think we want to work with for planning out Gabriel's power: acrobatic skills, manipulation of electronic devices, and some sort of transformation mechanic, where you get to play as Madison, who acts like a survivor and supports Gabriel's mechanics while providing stealth and utility. This is a lot of shit to put into one power, and it took me ages and several iterations to plan it out. Especially once Wesker came out and I had to change my idea for Gabriel's chase power a bit to set him apart from the funny blonde tunnelling man. Here's my Gabriel power, and I do hope you enjoy it. Gabriel May, the Parasite, comes with the power under her skin. This comes in two parts: Madison and Deathly Leap. Let's start with Madison. The Parasite begins the trial with Madison in control, and can switch between Madison and Gabriel at will with a 2-second switching time. Madison has the profile, animations, and camera angle of a survivor. For all intents and purposes, she is one. Madison runs at 100% speed and has no terror radius or red stain, and can't do killer-specific actions like attacking a survivor, picking a survivor up, or breaking pallets, gens, or walls. Madison can cleanse totems, dull, hex, or boon at the normal survivor speed, with 50% increased cleansing speed against boon totems. Madison can also vault windows and pallets and drop pallets, but a pallet drop by Madison will become ephemeral, going all wobbly like the hallucinations. Ephemeral pallets can't be broken for 30 seconds after switching to Gabriel unless a survivor vaults it. Madison can hide in lockers if the locker is further than 12 meters away from a hooked survivor. Madison can also open chests, pick up and use items, and manually deplete the charges. She can even blind survivors with a flashlight should she find one. Madison can work on exit gates, generators, and totems, but doing so will not increase the progress. Instead, Madison will apply ephemeral to the object for as long as she's working on it. By working on an ephemeral objective, Madison will charge the Parasite's other power, Deathly Leap, to a maximum of 5 tokens, instead of actually progressing the objective. Gabriel can also charge the power from gates and generators, but this charges Deathly Leap at 50% reduced speed and cannot do so from totems. Bring us on to Deathly Leap. This is Gabriel's power. He's a standard 115 killer with a 32 meter terror radius and, well, Deathly Leap. When Gabriel has 2 or more leap tokens charged up, he can spend 1 to leap forwards. Upon landing, he can spend another 1 to do one of 2 things: leap again, spending another token in the process, or perform a leap strike, drawing his trophy blade and spending a token to leap and attack forwards with it, like a pig ambush attack with a bit of verticality. Once leap strike is completed, Deathly Leap ends. Leaping through a window or over a pallet will cause Deathly Leap to go on cooldown. Leap Strike, however, will not go at pallets or windows, although it can hit you in vaults. If a leap causes Gabriel to fall from a great height, any tokens spent during this leap chain are refunded immediately, and Deathly Leap's cooldown will be immediately refreshed so Gabriel can keep on leaping. A great height being anywhere Battle's Landing would proc. And I've got a list of add-ons here as well. The general idea is that you spend your time with Madison charging up your chase power on the objectives, and then using her natural stealth to get close to survivors once your power is charged, ready to switch to Gabriel and immediately go to town with your leap charges. Madison can do almost anything a regular survivor can do, and there's tons of use cases for things like looting chests to deny survivors items, breaking totems to get rid of boons, activate Pentimento, or even your own trap hexes like Haunted Ground, or drop pallets to deny pallet saves that are strongest when they're yet to be dropped, prevent pallet saves, and flip-flop power struggle. At the same time, there needs to be some checks and balances to make this sort of thing fair, such as ephemeral pallets to prevent pallets from Madison's dropping from being instantly broken by Gabriel before the survivor ever gets to them to play them, and the regular 14-second time investment Madison spends to break totems that aren't boons. If you think there's something that might be an issue with the power or something you'd like to see added, I'd love to hear some feedback on it. It's a really complex one, but I am really proud of it. And as for the other stuff that needs to make a chapter work, well, we definitely need a survivor. And while it's not necessarily a requirement, a map would be nice as well. As I said before, Madison can't really be the survivor despite being our final girl because she's got, let's say, family commitments. And Malignant has a pretty small supporting cast, leaving only really 3 options for a survivor: Madison's sister Sydney, Detective Shaw, and potentially Madison and Gabriel's mother, Serena May, who becomes the primary target of Gabriel's campaign of vengeance. Any of the 3 of them would be good choices, but I think Sydney would be the most popular because young, attractive women seem to be the only survivors anyone plays these days. But even aside from that, she could have some fun cosmetic options. We all know if the princess costume she wears for her job was purchasable on launch, it would probably outsell the entire Binding of Kin chapter by itself. And while fewer and fewer licensed chapters are launching with maps these days, I certainly wouldn't mind seeing the underground Seattle catacombs as a map, the place where Serena ran her tours and Gabriel clashed with Shaw. It fits that gloomy old school Giallo vibe that the whole movie was going for. We've never had an underground map before, apart from Hawkins, so I think the creative potential of it could be really interesting. Malignant is certainly a strange movie and not one that's ever going to draw the kind of support and numbers that some huge license would, like Friday the 13th or Five Nights at Freddy's. But in terms of the applicability of modern horror movies to DVD, I can think of no finer candidate to add to this game. Malignant is everything fun and liberating and exciting about modern non-franchise horror. And that's something audiences have really started to embrace in the post-lockdown horror landscape. I know a lot of people really did not like Malignant. It's a pretty divisive film like that. And truth be told, I don't think it will ever get a chapter, especially with the film's underwhelming box office returns. But if someday we did get Malignant and Dead by Daylight, that would be nothing short of a massive dub for the game, and especially its community of horror lovers. And it'd be the next best thing to a sequel, which is unlikely to ever get due to weak financial returns, but its success on HBO Max may have been enough to get one greenlit. In any case, Malignant is a film that deserves far more recognition and success than it got when it was released, and I can only hope that one day Gabriel will return to darken our doors and face camp our teammates in Dead by Daylight. Well, that's it, friends. Hope you enjoyed this video on Malignant. I adored Malignant and I want to talk about it for ages, but I wanted to give a decent window for everybody who wanted to watch it. If you have any particular thoughts on Malignant or My Power, or have any other suggestions for future videos on Potential and Problem series, then please do leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And if you're not subscribed, I'd really appreciate you doing so if you want to see more of what I'm working on. Links to my socials are in the description too, so you can check me out on Twitch and Twitter, and various other places, including Patreon. Patreon's got to see this video and all my other videos a day early, so if you're interested in that, then that's up to you. I will never expect anything from anybody, but if you do, I massively appreciate it. It helps to keep the lights on over here, especially given that videos like these are liable to get demonetized. Well, that's all from me. Have a fantastic Halloween, and I will see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.